Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Today, I'm in conversation with Yev Khessin, CTO and founder of DIMO, digital infrastructure for moving objects, with a goal to build something disruptive. Yev has been in the automotive industry for over 10 years and has led engineering and technical products with various manufacturers and suppliers on IoT, connectivity, embedded software, self-driving, electric vehicles, etc. As a car lover, he also believes that we are at the crossroads similar to the moment when we went from horses to cars. In this very fascinating conversation, Yev talks about how he started to code at a very young age and also nurtured his interest in cars by doing a computer science degree and working in the automotive space. And moving to Michigan and working across various departments such as internal tooling, product planning, handling recalls, etc., gave him a well-rounded experience of the automotive sector. As a consultant, he also worked with big names such as Ford, Volkswagen, Mitsubishi, etc. And he gets on to talking about what it takes to think about programming an ecosystem. He talks about the challenges of creating this digital infrastructure for objects that are moving at a high speed, being and staying connected, and complying with all local regulations as they move. The difference between earlier approaches of building vertically integrated systems to a more flatter, peer-connected model. And he shares an interesting story of how a connected car worked well on its trial and in the target location, but when moved to a different city, the kind of challenges that they had to face. Being born in Ukraine, he also shares the understanding the difference between centralized and decentralized systems. We also talk about where the human fits in when we talk about autonomous vehicles and software controlling pretty much a large part of the ecosystem. And the value of being able to retain personal preferences and custom experiences across OEMs and how that would make the experience much better for the individual, and how trust and experience would depend on the developers writing more and more applications on the platform. I asked him about the startup bug that caught him and how the DIMO team came together. And that is in the second part of our conversation in the next episode. Listen on. Hi, Eb. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've always been intrigued by these connected cars and so many things that you hear about them. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you to understand your journey into this space and then what are your plans and so on. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with your origin story. How did you get into IT and then probably into the automotive segment?
Yeah. So that's a good start. So for me, I've been coding since a very young age. I got my first laptop when my dad first came back from the United States. I was born in Ukraine, so he brought one back for me and started playing around with like Lego Mindstorms and things like that at a very young age. And at the same time that I discovered Lego Mindstorms and programming was also kind of when I started getting into cars quite a bit. And that has sort of always stayed with me. I, having always loved cars and kind of being a car guy, went to college, obviously, for computer science. And after graduation, pretty much, spent my entire career working in the automotive car space. So kind of a car guy through and through, and also a software guy through and through, which aligns well, obviously, with moving to Michigan, since there's quite a bit of that here. And, I've worked in, I would say, quite a few areas across the automotive space, everything from internal tooling and product planning. I've worked on GM's internal product planning systems that go 10 years out, handling major recalls, after kind of spending some time on, let's say, internal tooling at GM, I moved into OnStar. And at OnStar, we were very early to the connected vehicle space, as you know. And where where I found my interest is really in the connectivity portion and how you get this remote device that that everybody owns, and getting it connected and providing a better experience to it. And that pattern of connected vehicle has sort of stayed with me through my career. Following that, I started a consulting company working with Ford on their autonomous vehicle project, kind of really at the intersection of integration between self-driving or the real world and the connectivity that new modern vehicles provide. And after spending some time there, also worked with Volkswagen and Mitsubishi on their connected vehicle program as well. I've always, the theme has not changed throughout the years, but it's been very interesting applying and watching kind of the automotive space go through this transformation that we're going through now, which is, we're really going from dumb cars to smart cars. And the closest, I think, relative to the time that we're in now is almost, early 1900s, where we were going from dirt roads and, a carriage to the Model T. And I truly believe that we're in a very similar time now, where the car is sort of going from this dumb vehicle driving on a dirt road to this connected, infrastructure on wheels that, that has ability to travel across the whole country, that has ability to interact with other vehicles, has ability to interact with your phone, your home, and obviously cities that we live in.
Yeah, wonderful. I think this opens up a lot of dimensions. I don't know where to start. As a software person, usually we say that there is a big personal transition that one goes through. Starting with what we call programming in the small, when you do small projects, versus even enterprise software, which is programming in the large. And what you're talking about is programming the ecosystem.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So what does it take for someone to even start thinking about it? Because it is obviously not a homogeneous ecosystem. Even if you talk about different cars talking to each other, probably coming from different vendors, following different protocols, different speeds of evolution. So how do you even conceive of a solution that would work with so many variable parts?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And it is, there is different kinds of complexity in software. There's sort of accidental, and then there is intentional complexity that comes through it. And with vehicles, it's certainly a lot of complexity that just comes along with the fact that it's a real world object that has to move at 70 miles, an hour through the real world, has to comply with regulations globally. And obviously, the connectivity to the internet creates a lot of interesting issues as well. Things I've seen work and things I haven't seen work through the years. So automotive companies are very good at building cars, is what I would say. And historically, they've excelled at that. And software is something that they were kind of thrust into, mostly out of, the rise of the iPhone, the rise of Android, and newer technologies that make, that have made our phone smarter, our house smarter. And a lot of the ways that we're doing things before don't necessarily apply to the way that things have to be to connect a vehicle to the internet. And that's something that I've really seen through my experience. I think the most obvious portion of where, homogeneity that you called out becomes very interesting is a lot of regular software space, the Googles, the Amazons, they're incentivized, and they also create very vertically integrated systems, which is generally how also the automotive OEMs have started building a product. So, you look at an OEM, they have their own mobile app, they have their own cloud software solution for connecting those vehicles. They have their own hardware and hardware code in the vehicle, in the TCU, that allows the car to connect. And everything is great until you hit the point of integration. And, as people in software know, integration is something you never punt to the end. It's something you have to consider at the very beginning. Otherwise, it might not ever happen. So taking this into account, and I'll give you an example of my time just working with autonomous vehicles specifically. So when I was at Ford, and it's been in the news before as well, we launched a connected fleet in Miami, and we were able to figure out how to make the car park, how a user could request a ride, how a user could be able to unlock a car, and all of this worked up until the point of now do another city. And
Okay.
that's where the vertical integration becomes a pain, because once you touch the real world aspect of things, vertically integrated systems start to not work so well. And the reason for that is every city has a different API. Every parking company meter has a different API. Every city has different regulations. If you want to talk to another car from another make, that's also another API. So you end up with infinite complexity in order to replicate this in a, let's say, globally or nationwide even, right? And at this point is where, you have to kind of start taking a look back and say, well, I'm not gonna be able to integrate 8,000, different APIs for mobility, for parking, for, let's say, for charging even, right? As we move into the electric vehicle space. So looking at how we've solved these things in software before, I think is in my mind, how I think we get to a better solution, which is you have to look at things like Linux and really open source projects like OpenSSL. The reason they have stayed with us and really worked for us is because they are really open, and they provide some security because they're open and people are constantly monitoring them. But also it's anybody can leverage them, right? And tying this back to the automotive industry, actually used to quite a bit, create working groups and create standards that they would all implement around the same time and work together. And I think that's the model that we really need to go back to in order to deliver a connected vehicle that works. And the only unfortunate part that I have seen recently is, everybody is trying to figure out how to make a more vertically integrated API as opposed to more open API. And that's really going to be the difference between us achieving this, connected smart world and a connected vehicle world in any time in the next 30 years, or is it just always going to be a pipe dream? Tying this back a little bit to my experience as well, being born in Ukraine and having some of the, let's say, background in how centralized systems work versus decentralized systems, it is much easier to implement everything at the beginning in a centralized system. But as time goes on, it just doesn't scale. But I think the core problem we're facing now is we don't want some other government to build this open source API for the world. We want ideally a democratic government to build this open API for the world and that connected vehicles can use.
Okay. Yeah, two questions triggered by this.
Yeah.
When we talk about autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and the entire ecosystem, where does the human fit in?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing. So, and I think it comes down to what is the value proposition for DIMO user, right? Because our general approach to this is the way you create an open source ecosystem that an OEM could buy into is actually by giving really good value to the end user who is using the car. So, and we picked like DIMO as a project is actually very generic in terms of what it can support, and it could be any IoT device. But we started with vehicles because one, they're the second largest purchase anybody makes. Especially in today's world, car prices keep going up. You're spending, upwards of $50,000-$60,000 to get a vehicle. When you spend that much money on something, as most of us have, you want to make sure you're getting, one, a great car, two, you're getting a great product, right? And I think the most interesting thing that a lot of people may not be seeing that's happening now is all of the software and all the data coming off of your vehicle is not owned by you. And what DIMO really allows you to do is own your vehicle and the data coming off of it, which is a large change from the world we are in today, where you buy a car for $6,000, but you don't own any data coming off of it. So, and once you start collecting your data yourself, it really enables a whole new ecosystem of applications and a whole new world of possibilities for the user. So one simple example is just convenience. So historically, people used to keep their oil change records or tire change records. And this data is very, very like dependent on a person to collect. Creating a way for a user to automatically kind of attach all of this data to their vehicle so that when they show up, for example, to a service appointment, they can actually, kind of tell the dealer or the service advisor, hey, here is my, my car's health history, and here's what it's been through, here's what I've done, would improve that experience significantly for so many people. Because most of the time you show up and you have to explain, we've all been through there. It's like, here's what I did before, here's what I think the issue is, and none of it is data driven. And that's just almost, crazy in a modern world where, if you compare that to taking your cat to the doctor or yourself to the doctor, they have an entire history of data to leverage in terms of what's going on with your car. But with cars today, we're still going, well, what do you think is wrong with it? That's the convenience portion. Now, tying this back into also autonomous vehicles, this gets into safety. So as we've seen, the autonomous vehicle space has definitely a trust issue with customers, right? People don't really trust this robot driving a car just yet. And you can also, in this case, look for how other places have solved it. So the reason we all get on an airplane is because it has a black box. And you don't have to ask Boeing what happened if something goes wrong. Same thing here. We're working on a next generation hardware for DIMO that will actually support this black box V2 essentially concept for vehicles, to where it's not just the OEM in the car, it's sort of a neutral party in the car with you that you can trust to see what happens. But I think between improving your ability to have the health for your car and the convenience that provides, improving the safety, allowing you to own your data, and at some point we all have to sell the car. When you sell the car, getting you the best value for your vehicle based on how you took care of it, not how the general market took care of your car, could generate a customer thousands of dollars more in additional, let's say, additional money that they get back, especially if there's somebody who takes care of their vehicle. As we move into the electric vehicle space, I think this is going to become even more important. All of the value in this electric vehicle is really in the battery. And if you can prove that your battery health is good, your car might be worth near MSRP. But if your battery is shot, your car might be actually worth nothing. And I think the scariest part, and the thing that I'm seeing, is a lot of people may not be aware of this going into an electric vehicle purchase. One of the things DIMO really hopes to do is provide you that very early on by showing you what the value of your car is over time, and showing you how to have better charge habits will get you more at the end than you are able to get today with actual data on how your vehicle is used and performs.
Yeah, that's interesting. But what I had in mind was probably slightly different. Because
Okay.
this comes from, one of my initial experiences in the US was I used to live in Detroit, and driving in Detroit follows one style.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was visiting Boston,
Mm-hmm.
where you had all these roundabouts those days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a completely different style of driving.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that probably Detroit is a lot more disciplined. And when you go there expecting that somebody else would probably give way, I would just wait and people will start honking behind me. So I meant something more like that in autonomous vehicles, the personalities of cities, or even the driver. Many times we consider the car as an extension of our personal statement. I want this car to show something, or to show my personality. Sometimes I may drive aggressively, sometimes I just want to relax. So with autonomous vehicles and humans in the vehicles, do you see anything that kind of blends the two together to increase the trust or increase the comfort feeling?
Yeah. So I think, since we're both in software, usually trust and experience comes down to ability for developers to write software for the platform. And for DIMO, I think the way that we're approaching this problem is by creating an open ecosystem for applications to be built that allow these individualized experiences to exist, and also to exist across brands. Most of us have more than one vehicle, and you change them sometimes. If you store all of your vehicle preferences and all of the applications that you like with one OEM, when you change vehicles, that experience will be gone. And so, to give them, if you're in Austin, Texas, for example, and you're getting out of a Waymo into a Argo AI car, right? None of your preferences and none of your experiences that you like to have in your car will come along with you. Mm-hmm. So for us, I guess tying it back, it's about the open side of it. I think the important part is cross OEM, but the second even more important part is the ability for anybody to build an application. So DIMO is a open ecosystem that anybody can join, and you can bypass all of the bureaucracy for essentially that you get with a large company, and really interact directly with the owner of the car, or in the case of an autonomous vehicle, the passenger of the car. So I think removing the barriers that we have today between having to ask each OEM separately, can I build an app on your vehicle? And can I get these permissions to this data? Will unlock the entire world of personalization and custom experiences that developers can create, right? Taking a look at what Apple has done with their App Store, you can, even with a Notes app, there is 16 different versions to have that experience, and it comes down to giving people options and removing barriers to what it takes to build an application. And obviously, with what we're doing with open source code and open platform, is something that we hope to enable. DIMO itself definitely cannot create every experience in the world, same as an OEM can't create every experience in the world. But if you allow people to customize their experience via an open ecosystem, that will allow infinite customization and create new markets essentially for those interactions that you're describing with with vehicles, and having them really be more serving me as opposed to me serving the vehicle, which is sometimes what it feels like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you've been mentioning a lot of things that are being conceived, that have been created by DIMO. Let's talk a little bit about the DIMO origin story. What was it that brought you to DIMO? How did you said you were also a consultant. From there, how did the startup bug bite you? And how did this founding team come together? Because I have a couple of questions related to that.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
please subscribe on your favorite podcast client
and spread the word in your network.
If you'd like to share your story,
contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.